All right. Hello, everyone. Sorry to interrupt that incredible music, but I want to thank you all so much for joining us. This is Left Bank Books welcomes Jeffrey Ricker, Nathan Burgoyne, and J. Marshall Freeman, who will discuss their highly anticipated new book, 3 Left Turns to Nowhere. Tonight, they will be in conversation with me. Left Bank Books is St. Louis's oldest independent bookstore. We would like to thank all of our supporters, the supporters of Jeffrey, Nathan, and J. Marshall, and everyone for their outpouring of love for our bookstore. Left Bank Books offers in-store shopping, curbside pickup, and delivery to anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world even. So if you are watching this event from Canada, we do indeed offer Canadian shipping. We are happy to be able to bring our event series virtual. We believe that events are a way to expand your mind and bring in new thoughts to make the world a better place. We hope that you enjoy this event, and we hope that you support Left Bank Books by purchasing a copy for you or for any of your friends at left-bank.com. Purchasing a copy of the book from Left Bank Books allows us to keep our bookstore and staff operating, and it allows us to keep this event series going, bringing you incredible authors like our authors this evening. So thank you all so much for your support. I am Shane Mullen. I'm the events coordinator for Left Bank Books. I help produce our hundreds of author events each year with a fantastic team here in St. Louis. We will be taking questions from you, the audience, specifically at the end of the event, but also, since I'm in conversation with the authors, we can sprinkle them in throughout the conversation as well. So type your questions as a comment anytime you think of them. And be sure to follow Left Bank Books on Facebook and YouTube to be notified about all of our fantastic virtual events. And now, about tonight's book, 3 Left Turns to Nowhere. 3 strangers heading to a convention in Toronto are stranded in rural Ontario, where a small town with a subtle kind of magic leads each to discover what he's been searching for. Ed Sinclair and his friends get stuck in Hopewell after their car breaks down. It's snark at first sight when he meets local mechanic Lynn. But while they're getting under each other's skin, the town might show them a way into one another's hearts. Rome Epstein is out and proud and clueless about love. He's hosting a giant scavenger hunt at the convention, but ends up in Hopewell. When the town starts leaving him clues for its own scavenger hunt, he discovers a boy who could be the prize he's been searching for. Fielding Roy has a gift for seeing the past. His trip to reunite with friends hits an unexpected stop in Hopewell, but a long-lost love letter and 2 local boys gives him a chance to do more than watch the past. This time, Fielding might be able to fix the present. And now, about tonight's speakers. Jeffrey Ricker is the author of Detours and the YA fantasy The Unwanted. His stories and essays have appeared in Foglifter, Phoebe, Little Fiction, the Citron Review, the Saturday Evening Post, and others. A 2014 Lambda Literary Fellow and recipient of a 2015 Vermont Studio Center residency. He has an MFA in creative writing from the University of British Columbia and teaches creative writing at Webster University here in St. Louis. Nathan Burgoyne grew up a reader and studied literature in university while making a living as a bookseller. His first novel, Light, was a finalist for a Lambda Literary Award. Triad Blood and Triad Soul are also available from Bold Strokes Books, as is his YA novel Exit Plans for Teenage Freaks and his first collection of Echoes Born. For novella lovers, in Memoriam, Handmade Holidays, Faux Ho Ho, Village Fool, and A Little Village Blend are shorter queer romances, often with a dash of speculative fiction. A cat lover, Nathan managed to fall in love and marry Daniel, who is a confirmed dog person. They live in Ottawa, Canada, with their rescued husky, in case you were wondering how the cat-dog thing turned out. And J. Marshall Freeman is a writer of fiction and poetry. He is the author of the young adult fantasy novel The Dubious Gift of Dragon Blood, and his YA adventure novel Barnabas Bop Wright Saves the City is coming this May from Bold Stroke Books. He is the author of the poetry chapbook Anthropoda and has appeared as a featured poet. Freeman is the 2-time winner of the Saints Plus Sinners Fiction Contest in 2017 and 2019, and he lives in Toronto with his husband. And now, without further ado, if you would please all help me in welcoming our fantastic guests for the evening, Jeffrey Ricker, Nathan Burgoyne, and J. Marshall Freeman for Left Bank Books. And I need to do that, and that, and that, and that. Hello, everyone!
Oh, look, there I am.
Well, I'm so happy to have you all here with us this evening. I want to, first of all, state that I thought this book was so incredible. I loved the way it played together, and I'm so excited to get to talk about it with all three of you. So this is really exciting for me.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we have people commenting. Hello, Matthew, giving a wave in the comments. All right, so let's get started. I want to know about this process. So this is at least in my eyes, a very original concept for a book. I know there are several movies that kind of play around with a similar type of concept of weaving stories together based upon like one kind of similar thread. But it's not often that you see this in a book, especially a queer book. So I'm wondering how this process all came together and how you made it work.
Who remembers?
I remember when we were all asked. We were all asked if we wanted to participate together in a novella project, and then we began brainstorming about where it could take place and what similar themes might weave in and out of each other. That's how it started.
Yeah. So the acquiring editor at Bold Strokes Books, Sandy, she actually approached me. I blew my arm out a couple of years ago walking the husky that you mentioned, and all the tendons from my wrist down to my elbow and then up and across to my shoulder were strained or ripped or torn, so I couldn't type. So I let the publisher know, I let Bold Strokes know that there was no way I was going to be able to output a novel anytime soon. But I love writing novellas, and I've always loved writing novellas. So I asked if there was any novella projects on the horizon. And I think that might actually be how she came forward to ask us if we would be willing to write YA novellas. The crossover thing, I think, we were just talking about like what kind of ideas, what kind of things would we like to do. And I'm pretty sure I had watched Let It Snow, which is a movie on Netflix that has sort of three main characters. And it turned out that was actually a book as well with three authors who'd written three intertwining stories. So yeah, I totally just, I brought that up to say like, would you be willing to try that? It sounds kind of fun and really complicated. And these two fools said yes.
Did you all know each other previous to starting this project?
I
knew Nathan.
Yeah. Nathan's the linchpin for all things in the universe. The books also what Sandy's brief was that they all had to be able to stand alone, but we had the fun of the writerly challenge of creating things that went together but also stood alone, which meant that as we created our common place and time and destination for the characters, we could think of ways in which each other's characters could appear in our stories without dragging it into the necessity of it being a single book, but the fun of it being a single book.
For the format of the book, was it always decidedly going to be the three novellas kind of one after the other, or was there ever talk about, because I like that format, just spoiler alert, this question is going to lead you in a direction of I'm wondering if maybe you had ever toyed with cutting up the novellas into and having...
No, not at all. I think from step one, it was pretty clear because Bold Strokes does do this format with their romance and with their erotica. I think this is the first time they've done it with a YA. But the idea with those other books is that they can also release them as smaller e-novellas. So yeah, it was very clear that we were to be writing our own self-contained stories that happened to cross over. Yeah.
And I was just going to say that Nathan and I both know some writers who have worked collaboratively to write a single book. And to be honest, I am amazed by anyone who is able to do that. And so I think that would have been quite a challenge. And I really do like the way that there are these little almost like Easter eggs in each of the novellas where characters from the others show up. It's a lot of fun.
But each story has its own frequency, its own way of being told. So it's fun when you spot the Easter eggs, but they're three very separate tales.
I want to get to some of those Easter eggs because I want to talk about the continuity, the things you'll find, but we'll get to that. I want to talk a little bit more about the process before we get to that. Who was was it the editor that kind of was the driving force connecting the three of you through the process, or did one of the three of you take up the town will be named Hopewell?
We had a Zoom meeting, and Jeffrey introduced me to the wonderful world of Google Docs. And then basically he would seed these documents that we could then go to and each of us edit. And it felt pretty organic to me. I don't know, you guys. Like Hopewell, I think as a name, we battered around a few different things first. And I went looking for North Ontario towns for us to basically create a template out of. Because it had to be somewhere that if the road got blocked, that was basically it, you're screwed, which actually happens a lot in Northern Ontario, so that wasn't too hard to find. But other than that, no, we kind of started with a very basic framework, and as we would write, we'd sort of edit these documents and let each other know, okay, this character's available, and this is what they look like, and yeah.
And they're heading to a science fiction fantasy convention in Toronto, and takes place that weekend. Yeah, so things like that. And then I would write letters saying, what's going on with this? And they would say, there's a Google Doc.
And then someone would have a suggestion, and I'll be like, I'll put that in the Google Doc.
The sequence of them, because I know it plays out very well with the threads going through each of the three. But the timeline is kind of almost it jumps around a little bit. So I'm wondering, they are out of order. Yeah. So I'm wondering if you toyed with having them, how did they end up in the order that they ended up in?
I think that was the editor's. Yes. I think that was the editor's decision. And I remember at one point, because my story takes place earlier, but it's not first. And I thought, who cares? It's kind of holographic. There's an event that's about to happen that becomes pivotal in the other two stories with the road being blocked, and my story happens just before that. And I said, that's okay.
Yeah, our editor was Jerry Wheeler for these novellas, and he is a master of anthologies. He's put together so many anthology collections. So when he suggested an order, I'm like, yeah, you know what you're doing. And so, yeah, basically if Jerry said, I think this would be the order, I just, yep, okay.
And it's kind of nice, even though it's not chronological. The things that pop up in the other writers' stories almost feel a little bit like echoes. In that way, and so it felt like it tied together in a just like a feeling, really. Yeah. I was going to say thematically, but then I think it's more of just the way it feels.
Nathan finished his draft before us, so there are a bunch of points like the diner. And which it was great. I was walking into a half-existing world which I could add to, and so that was fun. And then I don't know about you guys, yeah, but I think we all changed as we read each other's. We added in bits, so that was a fun way to work.
Yeah, mine had a big block in it where it said, Fielding sees what happens in Jeffrey's novella. That was just a line, and then I had to wait till Jeffrey's novella was done to go, okay, this is what he sees.
Right, and once I met Lynn, who worked for the garage, I said, "Oh, that's the one who comes when Rome's car breaks down."
Yeah.
Let's talk about representation for a little bit. There are a lot of identities under the kind of queer umbrella that are represented in the book, and I'm wondering if you. I'm wondering if that was, I don't know where that noise is coming from. Okay. I'm wondering how purposeful that was and how each of you decided to incorporate that into your story.
Give us an example. Ask the question.
So the mayor being Pan, I think is a great representation that is frequently not included. There are a lot of bisexual characters that are often left out of a lot of romance stories. Just the term queer, which I have a very upsetting story about being like how that is being not allowed in certain online discourses. It is being actually asterisked out, which is infuriating to me as someone that is part of my identity. And I'm like, that is not a bad, that's not a curse word. No, why are you?
Yeah, that would be a real problem for me because that's how I describe myself.
Yeah, me too. As for the mayor, that was Jeffrey. Jeffrey came up with the mayor and Sloan. I'm trying to remember everything we did. We did do it purposefully, and that's something I try to do in all my writing. Is that like my queer community isn't just a bunch of gay men. For one, even my immediate family, my sister-in-law and her wife are a part of my family. So the idea that very often you can. I find this happens more in romance than in YA, but you can read a book, a gay romance novel, or an MM romance novel, and there are no other alphabet letters anywhere in existence, and that's always really rubbed me the wrong way. Like where are the lesbians and where are the trans people? And so I think we were all very conscious of this being a queer YA story. I mean, yes, the main POV characters are sort of drawn from our own experiences quite a bit, but the rest of the queer alphabet exists because, of course, it does.
I think that, and one of the things I like to investigate is people who don't necessarily know, have an alphabet letter that they cling to. And people who do, and that's why I have my two characters of Rome and Darcy are so different. Rome, who is very much this queer identity and talks about that and talks about representation and the politics of it, and Darcy, who actually has a lot of experience sleeping with men but has no sense of calling himself anything. He's just, this is just me. This is what I do. I don't think about it. And I think that was also important to me because there's a lot of people who don't spend their time in discourses but have identities that need to be recognized.
Darcy also has an indigenous culture that he's coming to terms with as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was interested in how in the north, in towns like Hopewell, which have a very white self-identity, but Rome, whose grandparents moved to another northern city and were part of a very small Jewish community there, and then he meets Darcy, who is a mixed Métis blood, and how people are dealing with that in the context of these very white towns, or very white identified towns, self-identified.
Let's talk about some of the common threads, because there are a lot of really fun things that pop up in each of the stories. So one of the I'm going to forget his name right now. The boy at the diner, Joshua. He pops up in all the stories, as does grilled cheese, which we have to have an entire separate conversation about grilled cheese and ketchup, because I'm not from the land of grilled cheese and ketchup, and I have to know.
Okay.
Who's going to
that's
take
my
that one?
fault. Yeah, I think that was my fault. It's based on a sandwich I had in a small town in British Columbia. Is the short answer. But yeah, they and the ketchups, they existed. The little gourmet ketchups, and they would not tell you what was in any of the recipes. And the ketchup was the one I liked the best. So yeah, that just I basically stole that from real life.
It was too irresistible for any of us to leave out, I think, once you had created it.
When it came down to the grilled cheese, and I saw ketchup, and I was like, ketchup, really? And I thought, okay, because ketchup is not exactly my favorite condiment, but the idea of having a whole bunch of other ones that I could throw at my characters, so to speak.
Literally.
Was kind of fun. So,
but I think what's kind of
grilled
important
cheese.
about it is it's the dumb things, like this town has this one specialty at this one diner that everyone has to try, and I think that's what kind of gives a realism to the place, because it's not something significant, but it's this thing that, oh yeah, if you go to the diner, you have to have.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think you only actually name one of the other special dips. Am I mistaken? And do you know what the other 4 are in your heads that were not
in my head? No, but I bet it's in the Google Doc.
I distinctly remember that there was something like pesto, and there was something like honey mustard, and there was something like barbecue, but all of the recipes for these things were closely kept secret by the head cook, to the point where everything that he was using to mix each of the dipping sauces was unlabeled. Like, he knew what was in them, and he could tell someone how to make them, but he wouldn't tell them what was in those. So it was a closely kept secret.
So I want to
That
be
was a lot
able to
of fun.
name off all of the threads that are connecting the stories, but I would probably fail. But what are some of your favorite threads that connect? Because I think that one of mine, I really liked the stumps, the carving, which I think is in all 3 of yours. I could picture that very clearly in my head.
So that exists in a town called Orangeville, Ontario, where after the ice storm, a bunch of trees fell down and they hired an artist to carve tree stumps. So basically, Hopewell is this amalgamation of many of my experiences in Ontario towns, although Orangeville is like a fairly major city. But yeah, that was from their main street. Yeah.
Orangeville, were a fairly major homophobic police action that resulted in the suicide of a bunch of closeted men.
And also the school tried to kick out the LGBT club. Orangeville, not a great place. But
what's interesting about the stumps is, so you created that great image, and then that inspired me to create the character of the artist and give her a role in Darcy's life. So that's an example of how what one of us dropped in there really seeded an important idea for another story. I'm grateful for that. Thank you.
What are some other threads that were your own particular favorites?
Honestly, I love Joshua. I had so much fun inserting him into my story, and because he was fun and funny, and he would say the things that that someone else might think, but he'd say it out loud.
And that was first in Nathan's story, and then you decided you wanted him in yours, right? So
yes, I figured that he would have to have a bit part in mine.
yeah. Was that fun writing a character who you just read, like sort of embodying him?
Very much so, yeah, because I also wanted to make sure that I was keeping him in character, So I would often go back and look at the instances of him in elsewhere, and try and make sure that I was making him sound like the character. Yeah, I think that's really one of my favorite things about the process, just seeing those common threads pop up, because it's often nice when you're reading work by other people to see things that are familiar. I love it when I come across a book that references St. Louis, for instance, but to see those things in a fictional story that you are actually part of the process of was just a lot of fun, and it was sort of like a little present.
And I got to do the reverse, where, like I'd said, I'd left this big blank because I knew I wanted to have Fielding in the parking lot when they have their terrible disaster cute and slam into each other, your characters. And so I literally was going line by line through Jeffrey's draft and trying to get into someone watching from a third person point of view. And that was so much fun. It was like doing a writing exercise, and someone else had done all the work for you. Like it was a lot of fun to do it.
And atmospherically too, because in both of your stories, this tree has fallen over the Trans-Canada Highway and they can't get out of town. And I knew my characters were going to get out before the tree fell, but the rising wind became part of the tension rising in their story. So it got windier and windier as my story goes on, including a warning about, we might lose some more trees in this one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In the second story, the one thing that I really wanted someone to meet and have more of an adventure with the cute hotel staffer that was that introduced in.
That was in my story, yeah.
And then a little bit playing into the third story. Or no.
I feel like you didn't pick up on him, did you? No.
Yeah. I thought that certainly he is going to be the love interest in the third story, and I think there's room for a sequel, if you will.
That'll be in yours, Shane.
Hopewell has more stories to tell, probably.
I hope so.
That's kind of one of the cool things.
To write a romance. Sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
Yeah, it was actually a very conscious choice not to write a romance for me, because I wanted the only romance of the story to be the one he was trying to fix. So that's why Fielding doesn't have a love interest by the time it's over.
Mm-hmm.
But that was such a touching story.
To try to sell things as romance. I don't think romance for me is always a thread rather than a genre that I'm writing in. If it's in there, it's I don't think of myself as a romance writer, and yet everything I write does tend to have an important pairing in it. Well, not the upcoming book.
And there's also a very underrepresented, just platonic friendship, platonic romance, how there doesn't need to be the meet cute and the I completely appreciated that about your story. So actually this will be a good time to talk about this conscious steam level. So when we talk about romance, queer or not queer romance, I like to talk about the steam level. This is purposefully YA. So I'm wondering where you had your lines cut off of this can happen on the page, this cannot happen on the page, if those were delineated or if they were just naturally something that you thought that just fit the characters really well.
Well, I knew that Ed and Lynn were just we were just seeing their first day knowing each other, more or less, and that it didn't quite start off on the right foot, and so I figured I didn't I knew that it wasn't going to go to anything really beyond the first kiss. Spoiler alert. I suppose I should say that beforehand. But anyway,
Leave the chat.
it was just the it was the nature of the timing, as well as the time elapsed, that that I figured, that's as far as their budding romance would go, and but they're on their way to Toronto. Oh, another spoiler alert. But anyway,
That's in the blurb. It's okay.
yeah, well, sort of, yeah. But yeah, it wasn't so much a conscious choice as it was a choice of the narrative.
Sure. In terms of steam level, I'm always very conscious about what I'm doing with that. In my previous novel, The Dubious Gift of Dragon Blood, I knew that sexual consent and sexual agency was an important theme, so that book is more explicit in that way. And I knew this one was much more about, didn't have the sweep of a novel to explore it either, but about two people who in their own ways didn't fit in and had a key to each other when they met. There was something about each other's personality that could open something up in the other. So the sexual tension is there, and it's rising, especially in the scene in Darcy's apartment when they go back there. But I knew that it wasn't going to be this, we meet and then we're in bed having passionate sex 2 hours later. I knew it wasn't going to be there, and I wanted, in fact, the ending of the story to be, don't know if there's going to be a relationship here or what's going to happen. Because the attraction is about more than just the sexual attraction; it's also about what they're helping each other to be, and so there's a lot about potential there. But sexual potential, relationship potential, just friendship potential. Yeah.
And I didn't give him a romantic partner, so.
It's good for you.
See, you were just like no steam from the very beginning.
I mean, I think at some point Logan says something about Joshua's ass, but I don't even have it written down. It's just a text he sends that Joshua reads and then calls him a pervert. So yeah.
I think that there's a mention of Joshua in each of the stories. I can't remember.
Oh, his butt, yeah.
yeah. Because I know that's a topic of conversation between Ed and his friends Curtis and Siobhan. And
he was actually off duty in the
which was
diner.
kind of funny.
Yeah. So,
oh, that's right. Yeah.
So I would have been happy to have Joshua. I just didn't have really room for that at that moment. Do you actually, Nathan? You deliberately toned down the steam by. As soon as these two characters meet, you bring in a boyfriend to make sure that it's clear to the reader that no, there's not going to be a romance here.
Yeah, So one of my big themes that I'm always exploring is chosen family and friendships. And again, I knew if I left, and it was funny because originally Joshua was just going to be Josh, and they were just going to hang out and be friends. But I knew if I left Josh single, readers, especially certain readers, would be waiting for them to end up together. So I wanted to throw the ice bucket of water on that expectation pretty much right away. So yeah, that's where Logan came from. Like he literally came from my desire to make it 100% clear that this was not going to be a romantic story for Fielding. Yeah.
That's so often the case. That's why I think that it worked with the interlinking, that you have something which is purely, okay, this is an assignment. I have to now link this to the others, and that creates really nice literary possibilities.
And I think that's one of the things that I appreciated about Fielding's story, because I think that I would love to, and I'm sure they're out there, and I just need to find them. But stories just about queer friendship. I think. Those are really enriching. They're enriching parts of my own life, really. So I would love to see and find more of those.
And I know that when I was reading like in their kind of early stages of queer YA, the closest you could get to a lot of queer characters were as the like best friend. Like you wouldn't have a queer main character, but you could have like a secondary or a third like tertiary like queer character that could be like, oh, here's someone gay, congratulations, here you go.
I would actually shout out Claudie Arsenault put together an Arrow Ace database of books. And in a lot of cases, that means there's a ton of focus on queer platonic friendships and relationships. If you look up Arrow Ace database, it'll be the first hit. And if not, her name is Claudie Arsenault.
Thank you for that. I know that is probably something that a lot of readers are looking for.
I'm writing it down right now.
Good. I want to remind the audience watching that if you have any questions, be sure to type those up now. We will be going to the dedicated audience Q&A here in just a few minutes. But I want to share that Sabrina is here saying, hi, Jonathan, congratulations on your new book. And Lewis Clint CC says, I love the grilled cheese motif. So
thank you.
Who doesn't love grilled cheese? Except maybe the lactose intolerant.
Yeah.
And so one thing that kind of struck me as being an odd thread to go through that I don't often think of as being a queer thing, and I think that Nathan, you kind of make this very pointedly, cars. I loved how there were like very unique and very specific car situations and car lingo and talk that, it's as a queer that has literally no idea about what is underneath my hood, even what year my car is. I'm one of those stereotypes. But Nathan, you bring in and someone who breaks the stereotype and actually knows a lot about and is very proud of cars. Jeffrey, you as well, with Lynn and Sloan, so there are a lot of breaking of stereotypes in that regard as well. So I really appreciated a lot of that.
I feel like I have to point out, I can't even drive. I don't have a driver's license. I'm not allowed to drive. But my sisters-in-law are motorcycle enthusiasts. So they answered some of my questions, and then I have some former frat friends who are huge car guys. So I was firing them questions like, if you saw a 65 Mustang, what would you ask? And I literally cut and pasted their responses. And then my editor and I were like, does that make sense? He's like, I don't know.
I use the car and Rome's inexperience as a driver as just one of his anxiety pieces.
So, because of my partner, I am actually a member of a gay car club, and so when it came to figuring out what Curtis drove and whether it would be available in Canada and I just thought 82 Ford LTD, and then it was a question of, okay, what's going to make it break that will cost around $350 and will take long enough to fix so they'll be stranded. And I said, would it be the alternator? And so I asked Michael, and he said, hang on a minute, and proceeded to ask the folks in his Facebook car club group, and they said, yep, it would be about this much, and it might be hard to get, and there we have it.
So much of writing is like
I love
that.
Cars.
Do you? Okay. But so much of writing is like that. Like, how long, what does something cost? How long would it take? What is that? How does that create story? Or how do you adapt your story to those facts? I like that about research.
Yeah, it is a lot of fun. Like just finding out about things that you never knew about before because you've written yourself into that particular problem.
I have to admit, one of the things I loved about Jeffrey's story was how he's constantly correcting himself and trying to sound Canadian. And bumping into, like, he's in his senior year. No, I'm in grade 12. You know, like, I loved all those little nuances that you threw in there. It really made me giggle.
That was from sort of personal experience from the 2 years I spent in grad school, and just sort of, and since it was, grad school in creative writing, picking up on the different ways that that people in Vancouver and Canada in general would speak, compared with folks in St. Louis, who also have, we also have our own distinct ways of speaking down here. But there were even things in Vancouver that were different from the way that they would, the terms they would use in other parts of Canada. So.
Jeffrey, I did notice, is your whole book written in Canadian, your novella in Canadian spelling? Like the narration?
Oh, the novella?
Yeah.
I certainly tried, and our fantastic copy editor was also able to catch a couple of few instances where I wasn't quite right. So
Stasia is great. Shout out to Stasia.
Yes.
Yeah, Stasia's awesome.
Yes.
One thing that we haven't talked about, and I'm kind of surprised that we got this far into it, the magical realism. We haven't really talked about how, at what point in the writing process did that come in, and I felt like it was a very unique way of making the town similar to. I felt like I was like Big Fish. Like, it felt like the town from Big Fish, like, so frequently, where it's like anything can happen, literally anything, and it felt very magical and very special.
Wow, I've never seen Big Fish, but one of the things that apparently I need to put that on the list of things to watch. But one of the things that when I realized we were doing, when we were going to be writing about a small town, I immediately thought of this movie that I saw back in like 2000 that was not called Big Fish, but it was called Big Eden. And it's set in this small town in Montana, of all places. And it's it is a queer romance, basically. And so I kind of found myself inspired by my memory of that movie and this this quaint kind of quirky town with these interesting characters in it. Louise Fletcher plays a character in it, and so that was kind of one of the things. And it's just this funny little town where things happen, and it's not explicitly magical, that town, but it has a magical feeling to me, if only because it's a small town in Montana where the entire town is trying to match up these two guys, and so that was the thing that that was one of my inspirations. And I just thought, it would be kind of it would feel like a magical place. And I don't know which of us came up with the idea of making it magical in the first place, or did it just, was it
again, it
sort
might
of
have
like
been because Nathan had the idea of his character seeing the echoes.
Yeah, so I tend to default specific. So I think when we were just discussing ideas, I had floated the thing that when Fielding gets there, he's not sure why, but it just ramps up. And I'm pretty sure one of you then were like, well, what if it's the town? I think it was just a throwaway comment, to be honest. And then
you have kind of ghosts, not necessarily of the dead.
Yeah, and what's the emotions? Yeah,
right.
And then Jeffrey, you had your spark about having him see someone important. Sorry, almost spoiler.
Good save.
And that rolled together to the point where we're like, oh, okay, if two of us are doing that, then really three of us need to come up with some sort of, otherwise it's gonna jolt a little bit. Yeah.
And then once I had that, I had I don't know, I think that happened very fast. I had the idea of the town leaves a scavenger hunt for Rome.
Yeah.
And it's very easy. It's funny. It doesn't feel to me like now having written a fantasy novel or a magic novel. It was just like, it feels to me like I'm just doing a realistic story, except the town randomly leaves little cards with clues on them. And okay, that's something that Hopewell does. And I sort of had the instinct not to lean on it too heavily. It just happens. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think any of us ever explain it. It just happens. Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of like one of the TV shows that I used to love, I think back in the 90s, it was very realistic, but it had a speculative premise, was a show called Early Edition. And it's the only thing about it is it's a guy who gets tomorrow's paper today. And usually there's something in it that needs to be fixed. And so then he goes about doing it. But everything else is very realistic about the show.
We all did that. We each had like sort of one unique bit of magic for each of the stories, and the rest just played out based on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
We do say, I think more than one of us say that Hopewell has kind of a reputation for giving people what they want, or sort of a subtle agency to the town.
Yeah, it was Lynn's mom, I think, is where we put that language in. Like we had one of the adults in the town be like, no, this place is weird because of her backstory, and even having Lynn be so rejecting of that for most of the I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, his mom mentions it, and then Sloane mentions it in passing, just because her wife really buys into it because she thinks that it was the town that brought her and Sloane together.
Yeah.
So.
And Josh, of course, is just 100% up with anything that's positive and optimistic and adds to hope. So.
I just love Josh.
I should mention that the town magic is very much also about breaking cars.
Yes.
Yes.
Sloane's business.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Sloane does a great business.
You could do a whole kind of love boat thing with Sloane as kind of the host, where every week someone breaks down on the highway.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that could be an anthology series. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Joshua needs his own book sometime. Nathan.
Love Garage.
Yeah, I would not disagree. Josh almost ran away with the story, and I could happily tell more about him. So yeah.
I love finding those characters, the ones that just sort of like take over the narrative, and you don't realize it when you're thinking about the story and you're coming up with the ideas, but then it's like you just get these characters who are so much fun to write, and
it's the
then you want to
first
keep
time
writing
it's ever
them.
happened.
Yeah,
I've never had that before. Yeah, no, my characters tend to obey. Like I've never had that experience until Josh, and that was when I was like, oh crap, this is what people are talking about. Yeah.
Joel's mother in Detours. My first, I encountered it in my first book, and then I just let it happen all the time after that.
Yeah, always happens to me.
Yeah.
I actually missed a question from Sabrina. So Sabrina now has 2 questions, but I also wanted to say that Stephen says Big Eden is the most beautiful film. So
Stephen is correct.
So for Sabrina has a couple of questions. A couple of them we kind of briefly talked about in the beginning, but we can say it again. So Sabrina asks, why did 3 of you decide to write a book together? And are you worried that the writing styles are not consistent? And I can say that they work together very well, regardless of the fact that you can distinctly tell that they are unique authors, and it's not hidden that they are unique authors. But then Sabrina says, I haven't read the book yet. When 3 stories happen simultaneously, what did you do to make sure that the readers don't get lost when switching from one scene to another? And so I think we can actually maybe talk a little bit more about how the book is actually laid out, because I maybe hinted at it, but I didn't actually say it. So
They're 3 completely distinct stories with beginning, middle, and end, and the next one, and the next one. And the fact that there are things that overlap is more like things you discover as you read the next one, but it's always clear which story you're in because they all stand alone.
And I think the writing style comes down to a character voice thing. Like it's, when you're in Fielding's head, it's a different place than when you're in Lynn's head. It's a different place than when you're in Rome's head. So our writing styles just, I think, lent themselves to strengthening character voice.
But we never discussed that we were all doing, I never know the names of these things, third person motivated, whatever it's called. We're all writing in the same tense and in the same person. We didn't discuss that. It just sort of arose, didn't it?
That's true.
Yeah, it did. And it's funny because I know that for me, like I usually write in first person. And so I consciously wanted to not do that. And so this was a great opportunity for me to sort of break out of that habit. And I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I think it helped because if we had done first person, it would have been 3 stories with I, which I think would have been actually harder for a reader to hold apart. So I did the same thing. I chose third person on purpose.
But we all 3 chose independently. Yeah. Ended up in the same, which is kind of...
We just didn't talk about it. Yeah.
Or maybe it's because we read yours first.
Oh, that's true. I guess you guys had mine first.
Maybe you set the tone. Yeah.
You were the group project person who did all the work, ahead of time, and then the rest of us, came in the night before and just.
It did make for a very large gap until edits. That was an interesting experience to get the edits back, and I'm like, I haven't looked at this in like a year.
I was like, wait a minute, I wrote this?
Yeah.
It's always funny coming back to it like that because, by that point, I've been knee deep in a different story for, a year at least. So it's always funny to come back to it and realize it's something that you created, and having 2 other people who created it with you. It's nice to come back and see those stories with fresh eyes, and that also helps for like catching things where you didn't see it before.
This is the fastest project I've ever worked on. Well, I guess I have a short story. I think it was about a year ago when I started it, and now it's out.
Yeah.
I like how there are so many choices that you made pointedly, and then there are so many choices that just like organically created themselves to make this work so well. So I there's a bit of magic in the writing of this magical book. So. Sabrina asks, is it 3 point of views and 3 different voices? Yes, Sabrina. It's,
very much so.
Yeah. And they go kind of out of chronological order with threads that connect the 3 of similar of characters that make appearances in each of the 3, but there are 3 very unique, very pointedly unique main characters that you get to have the full arc and then another full arc and then another full arc of each story that actually builds very nicely into like a beautiful little climax. So I think it works together very well as individuals, but it also just plays together so well into a form of a book. So
thank you.
Well, thank you. Yeah. I think going back to our editor, Jerry Wheeler, I think he his decision on the sequence was absolutely spot on.
Yeah. So I guess we can ask, like, do you have plans to either do the same format again together, or make a sequel of like 3 Right Turns to Nowhere? Like, I mean,
can I give the conservative version? I know that's a boring answer, but can I give the business answer? If it sells well,
yeah. Which, speaking of, I'm going to share the link to tonight's event, which has how to order 3 Left Turns to Nowhere. It also has previous books from all 3 authors, including some upcoming books, because we have Barnabas Bopright Saves the City, which we are doing pre-orders for as well. So sharing the link that has a long list of books that we have available from all 3 of our fantastic authors this evening.
Thank you. Yeah. Nice way to set that up, Nathan.
Yeah.
I know that's the kind of grungier answer than something musical and magical, but I mean, it's the truth. If you're an author trying to make a living, the stuff that sells well gets the most attention, right? And that's just the reality. And from a publisher point of view as well, like if it sells well, they will ask for more.
Correct. Yeah. If people want more of the story, they will tell their friends about it, and they will say, I read this incredible book. You should read it as well, and tell your friends about it, because that is the way that social media has played into so many incredible success stories of recent books. So definitely read this book, tell your friends about it, tell them to watch this event if you enjoyed it. It is going to be, we are concluding soon, but the event becomes a video, and you can rewind, watch it all over again. If I made a terribly funny face at some point, you could screen grab and throw me up on the internet. I don't know. Who knows? Who knows what people do?
Oh, I'm sure I made one.
I enjoyed reading the book so much. I have enjoyed getting to meet 2 of you for the first time this evening. Jeffrey is a longtime friend of Left Bank Books and a friend of mine. So it is just a really fantastic evening, just talking about some really great literature.
Thank you, Shane.
Oh, it's been a blast. Yeah.
All right. To the audience watching, thank you all so much for joining us. And wherever you were joining us from, if you're joining us from Canada, remember that we do offer international shipping to anywhere in the world, except for the UK right now, but we're working that out. It's a long story. Brexit. But anywhere in the US is perfectly fine. Canada, we mail there all the time. So we hope that you support Left Bank Books, and we hope to see you again really soon for another incredible event. So
thank you.
Have a good evening.
All right.